sometimes painful, so thank you for coming. And so maybe first, let me introduce myself, explain my trajectory, my personal trajectory, and how I ended up with this true conference, Adam Smith Le Grand Tour. Okay, so first, my name is Vanessa Oltra. I'm an economist, or at least I'm supposed to be an economist. Anyway, at least I'm associate professor of economics at the University of Bordeaux. I'm a woman, French one, and I was born in 1971 in Colmar, which is a small, typical and touristic city in the northeast of France. And so in 1971, remember, the price of oil was only $3 a barrel. It was almost the end of the Bretton Woods system, and the French unemployment rate was only 2.8%. I'm very, very attached to contextual elements because they are very, very important to me. So, then, I was 10 in 1981. So I remember very well. It was in May 1981. The pink socialist wave sweeps through France. I remember the crowd in the streets, the shout, excitement, silence at all. And even if I did not really understand what was happening, I was 10. I decided to leave pink roses on the motorway of the cemetery of my village. And then GDP growth rate started to decrease. So do I. I finally reached the age of majority. So 1989, a great year. Year of the bicentenary of the French Revolution. Year of the fall of the Berlin Wall. Year of the massacre of the Tiananmen Square, and year of my scientific baccalaureate. Come on, yes. And I remember very well the philosophy subject exam, which is to calculate to think. Then, the year after, I moved to Strasbourg. I entered the Faculty of Economics. At that time, started the big program: microeconomics, macroeconomics, mathematics 1, statistics probability 1, then advanced microeconomics, advanced macroeconomics, mathematics 2, statistics probability 2, then very advanced microeconomics, very advanced macroeconomics, mathematics 3, statistics probability 3, econometrics, mathematics 4, 5, 6, 7. I love to count numbers to infinity, even backwards. And you know, finally, what did I learn? If I would have to summarize in one sentence, I would say that I learned one very important thing, which is that everything is a matter of equilibrium. So, if the world is topsy-turvy, just don't worry. It just means that we are not at equilibrium, or not at the good one. And so the solution is very simple, because we just need to change equilibrium. And how? By jumping from one equilibrium to another one. Or by modifying the slope of the function. If the slope is slippery, one just needs to reduce the incline. The same if the slope is too steep. So, don't worry. Everything is a matter of derivatives, partial derivatives, chain derivatives, total derivatives. Maybe this is a common point between us. As economists, we love deriving. Yes. Then, 1994, I started my PhD. So I spent 3 years questioning myself on my possible contribution to economic science. And after, I would say, 30,000 cigarettes, I ended up with a thesis of 367 pages. And this marked the end of compulsory figures. Because after that, the West was won. I moved to Bordeaux, 1995. 2008. While euro entered into force, I entered the university through the other door, the one at the bottom of the lecture hall, to start teaching microeconomics, macroeconomics, industrial organization, game theory, and while Europe was discovering the policing and polymorphism of the world crisis, economic crisis, monetary crisis, fiscal crisis, environment crisis, energy, consumption, sovereign debt crisis, legitimacy crisis, systemic crisis, and so on and so forth. And finally, in 2008, we all made the experience of the big economic crash. And what was striking to observe to me, after 10 years of teaching, was that at any point, my courses were impacted, affected, or modified by this chaotic economic context, as if there was absolutely no connection between the real and the theory, or as if economic theory was so powerful that it was completely fact-proof. Until one momentous day, a kind of turning point in my career, I would say. I remember I was giving my first course of history of economic thought. To tell you the truth, I was giving that course because I had to replace a friend of mine who was in maternity leave. And so I was presenting the first chapter, entitled Adam Smith, founding father of political economy, economic liberalism, or modern economic theory, whatever, anywhere, every course or book of history of economic thought has at least one chapter entitled Adam Smith, founding father of something. And so I was commenting the famous Adam Smith citation on the invisible hand. The one with the baker, the butcher, the brewer. You know what I mean, I'm sure. So I was commenting this citation, and suddenly, in the middle of the course, I heard some agitation.
Don't listen to her, she's talking rubbish! She doesn't know what she's talking about. She doesn't know who she's speaking about. If that were true, we wouldn't be in this mess. And by the way, this Adam Smith, do you at least know him? Adam Smith, the true one, the real Adam Smith, do you at least know him? Do you know who Adam Smith is? Is anybody here really know who Adam Smith is?
Have you ever heard about Adam Smith?
No. Sorry?
Who is Adam Smith?
No idea.
No idea?
No.
No.
No, we don't actually know.
You've never heard about him?
No. Adam Smith is an economist of Scotland.
I don't know Adam Smith. Should I?
Yes, he's the guy who wrote Wealth of Nations.
Yes, I do, because I am a history teacher.
He's supposed to be the pioneer of economics, or so-called of capitalist economics.
In the 70s and 18th centuries, the English elite often spent 2 to 4 years traveling around Europe to broaden their horizons and to learn about language, culture, geography, and this experience was called the Grand Tour. Adam Smith made this Grand Tour from 1764 to 1766. He went to France and to Geneva, and so I decided to make my own Grand Tour in Scotland, in the footsteps of Adam Smith. Yes, I wanted to know, I wanted to learn by traveling who was really Adam Smith. I was wondering what was left of him today in Scotland. I was wondering, would he have agreed with all that was said and written about him? Would he have agreed with all that has been done with Invisible Hand? And would he have agreed with what I was teaching? And would you like the Adam Smith ties sold by, sold by the Adam Smith Institute of London? So, we went to ask him. And so we started in Kirkcaldy, because Smith is born in Kirkcaldy, the 5th of June, 1793.
Not sure. The little baby Adam Smith was baptized the 5th of June 1723, and consequently we assume that he was born that day. But there is absolutely no trace of this birth certificate.
That's true. And Adam Smith was a child of fragile health. He was a posthumous child, since his father, also called Adam Smith,
Whose cousin, also called Adam Smith.
died 5 months before his birth. And
Which one?
the father of Adam Smith. So, he lived with his mother, from which he remained very close throughout all his life.
The founding father of capitalism was fatherless.
And Adam Smith, you know, was really brilliant. He was particularly good at school. So, at the age of 14, he was sufficiently advanced in classics and in mathematics to be sent to Glasgow University, where he started to follow classes of Latin, Greek, mathematics, and moral philosophy.
Since his childhood, he had this habit of falling into reverie and speaking loudly to himself while nodding his head, a habit he carried all through life.
And in Glasgow, he followed the philosophical lecture of Francis Hutcheson, who was a very important source of inspiration to him.
He called him his never-forgotten professor.
And at the age of 17, thanks to a grant called the Snell Exhibition, he left Scotland and he went to Oxford to study at the Balliol College. But be careful, at that time, Oxford has a low reputation for teaching. And the Balliol College was well known for the violence of its Jacobite opinion. You know, it was revolution time. So we thought,
Jacobite name, London here. Your Jacobite name, London here. Your Jacobite name, your bonds I will proclaim. Your doctrines I must claim, you shall hear, you shall hear. Your doctrines I must claim, you shall hear. What is right and what is wrong? By the law, by the law. What is right and what is wrong?
he went back to Kirkcaldy. And he started to give lectures in Edinburgh, started to be quite well known for his lecture. And in 1751, he was appointed a chair, a professor of moral philosophy at the University of Glasgow, where he stayed for 13 years.
The happiest period of his life.
Yes. And finally, let's say, well, finally after,
it's probably in this period that he met
David Hume,
absolutely
the philosopher,
David Hume.
from which he became very close friend. Yes.
Touch the big toe and make a wish.
Then, in 1759, he published his first book, entitled The Theory of Moral Sentiments, a book he always considered to be his major work, and that he continued to revise until his death.
The first French translation was entitled Metaphysics of the Soul.
Then, in 1764, he resigned his chair in Glasgow to go to France for his grand tour, and he went to Paris, where he met Voltaire, Quesnay, Turgot. He went more in society than during the few months he lived in Paris than at any other period of his life. And he was a regular guest of almost all the literary salons of that time.
He met Riccoboni, Marie-Jeanne Riccoboni, a popular actress and French novelist. She was crazy about him.
And she was not the only French woman to be touched with his charms. You know, Adam Smith was fond of French theater. And he wrote that Marivaux, Racine, Voltaire,
And Riccoboni
were more instructive on human nature and passion than all the Greek philosophers.
He considered Phaedra as the finest tragedy in the world.
And so after his grand tour, he went back to Kirkcaldy, where he lived with his mother and his cousin,
Margaret and Janet.
and he spent his time walking along the beach, speaking to himself, falling into reverie, sleeping and thinking and writing his famous book, An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations, published in 1776.
A bestseller, the most quoted and least read book in the world, the Bible of capitalism, according to Margaret Thatcher.
A 950 pages book, generally reduced to one citation. It's not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner. We address ourselves not to the humanity, but to their self-love.
Self-love. Self-love. In French, it depends. In 1778, it has been translated.
Self-esteem.
1790.
Love for themselves.
1802.
Selfishness.
And Bob, your uncle, we have come full circle. Voila. The role of translators in the history of ideas.
Adam Smith died in 1790, 4 years after his mother. He is buried at the Canongate churchyard in Edinburgh. And you know, I found that in 1976, a Polish author called Arthur Fontenys published a letter in the Journal des Économistes. He published a letter entitled Pilgrimage on Adam Smith's grave. Listen.
I am looking for the tomb of Adam Smith. I asked people in the streets of Edinburgh. Nobody knows. Nobody even seems to know Adam Smith. There are lots of Smiths in Edinburgh, says an engraver. After much research, I found the tomb of the great Scotsman. He rests there, the one who made the happiness of man, in the truest sense of the word. His tomb is surrounded by an iron fence, but this gate lacks a door that would give access to the tomb, which would allow the enthusiastic disciple to bring someday to his master a bouquet of flowers. This is how the Scottish greatest is honored in Scotland. Oh, to find a bloody key, remember. Hello, Edinburgh City Council. Yes, are you the Edinburgh Centuries
manager? Great! I'm calling about the gate of Adam Smith's grave.
The statue was created by Alexander Stoddard, who is also the queen sculptor. You know, they say that the statue look in the direction of the sea, and that is great because the market is fluid like the sea.
Adam Smith!
Yeah.
His grave in Canongate Kirk. You know, there's a gate and a padlock in front of the grave.
And they say that, look, his right hand is partially hidden by the tissue of its toga, and that it's supposed to represent his invisible hand.
Would it be possible to open it, the padlock?
And you know, the statue was entirely financed by private donations from banks and institutes on the verge of bankruptcy in 2008. A great year! Year of the unveiling of the statue, year of the financial crisis, and International Year of the Potato.
Yes, the padlock to leave flowers. What kind of flowers? Roses, white roses.
And so, while the banks had to be rescued by the state, Adam Smith, celebrated as the father of economic liberalism, took pride of place on Royal Mile.
Not possible? Why?
And you know, all this was organized by the Adam Smith Institute of London, which is one of the world leading neoliberal think tank. And
you don't have the key, but who has the key? Nobody.
so you know, I phoned the president of the Adam Smith Institute of London to ask him, why did you call your institute the Adam Smith Institute? Because for me it was not obvious.
So, who chained up the gate then?
And
You don't know? That's quite strange.
And you know, I didn't get any real answer. So I explained. I said, you know, I'm sorry, I can't see the link between Adam Smith's thought and your active campaign for free market solutions, like flat taxes, free banking, and radically liberal education.
Bizarre.
No reaction. So I go on, I said, you know, it's not because Adam Smith wrote that by acting on behalf of his own interests, every individual can promote the interests of society, that he was in favor of laissez-faire and radical deregulation.
We locked up Adam Smith.
No reaction.
And nobody knows why.
And you know, it seems to me that for you it's not as obvious as this either.
And nobody had the key.
Because on your website you wrote, it's not because Adam Smith is our main source of inspiration that he was right on everything. So meaning that you think that he was wrong on certain points. So please, which ones?
No. I want to leave flowers on his grave, not in front of the grave.
Have you ever read The Theory of Moral Sentiments?
For a pilgrimage, a tribute.
And do you know that it is in his Theory of Moral Sentiments that Smith developed all his philosophical systems? So to ignore Smith the philosopher is really to overlook Smith the economist. And also, does Smith the economist even exist? That's the question.
It's forbidden. By whom?
Listen. Book 5 of the Wealth of Nations.
The Queen! Forbidden by the Queen?
The sovereign has 3 duties. 1. Protecting the society from the violence and invasion.
My relationship with Adam Smith.
2. Protecting every member of the society from the injustice and oppression of every other member of it.
He's my father. A spiritual father, of course.
And 3. Erecting and maintaining those public institutions and those public works which, though they may be in the highest degree of advantageous to a great society, are, however, of such a nature that the profit will never repay the expense to any individual or small number of individuals, and which it, therefore, cannot be expected that any individual or small number of individuals should erect or maintain. Book 5. So you see, for me, this last point opens a rather wide perspective on the role of the state, especially concerning education, which is a central subject to Smith, and also, of course, on social justice.
Consent from the family. Excuse me, sir, but he died 223 years ago, and he has had never descendants, so...
Am I boring you? That's very interesting also.
Do you at least know who Adam Smith is? Me? I'm an actor, French actor.
Because Smith also wrote something about boredom. Yes, it's in book 1, chapter 4.
Actors are forbidden in cemeteries.
He wrote in book 1, chapter 4, I'm always willing to run some hazard of being tedious, so boring, in order to be sure that I'm perspicuous.
But I don't want to be buried there. I want to pay him tribute.
We should not be afraid of boredom. It's essential.
Non-negotiable. Impossible.
If we want to express ourselves, we should probably be boring at some point.
Even if I make a donation.
You know, we need time. We need time, slowness, care to develop our ideas.
I don't know, a donation to the Kirk, to the city, to... What about a donation to the Adam Smith Institute?
Do you know something about the expression the invisible hand? Yeah?
Do you?
Tell me what you know.
Yes, I know about the invisible man.
Invisible hand of the invisible man? Perhaps.
It's mystical and...
Like the hand of God?
Yeah.
Yeah, the hand of God.
Yeah.
Invisible hand.
Invisible. I don't know.
Invisible hand.
It's the way that the market functions, and it's like having an invisible hand to make things work.
I think in the context of Adam Smith's theories,
Yeah?
I think it can be, yes.
It can be the hand of the government.
Yes.
The theory of moral sentiments. Section 1 of the sense of propriety. Chapter 1 of sympathy. Should I begin with the beginning?
Yes, of course.
And what was he like?
He would always start very hesitant, you know, almost inaudible.
That! No. This. This. That or this? That is the question. That we often derive sorrow from the sorrow of others. That. Okay. Sentiment, like of original passions of human nature.
He stammered as well.
Is by no means confined to the virtuous and humane, though.
No. A light stammer, but a strong Scottish accent.
J'ai perhaps may fit. With the most exquisite sensibility, the greatest reverend, the most ardent violator of the laws of society, is not altogether without it, as we have no immediate experience of what us men feel. We can form no idea of the manner in which they are affected by conceiving what we ourselves should feel in the like situation.
Yeah, but you know, he was also a wonderful speaker.
What? Good to know. Make your mind up, stammering Scott or wonderful speaker?
He was a wonderful orator for sure. His biographer wrote, listen, as he advanced, the matter seemed to crowd upon him, his manner became warm and animated. So I think he was like a diesel engine.
He didn't write that, did he?
Well, it was a metaphor. Okay, so start again, but drop the Scottish accent. We need to be able to understand.
How selfish. So man may be supposed. They are evidently some principles in nature which interest him in the fortune of others and render their happiness necessary to him, though he derives nothing from it except the pleasure of seeing it. Of this kind is pity or compassion, the emotions which we feel for the misery of others, when we either see it or are made to conceive it in a very lively manner. By the imagination, we place ourselves in his situation. We conceive ourselves, and during all the same terms, we enter, as it were, into his body, and become, in some measure, the same person with him, and we then tremble and shudder at the thought of what he feels. When we see a stroke aimed and just ready to fall upon the leg or arm of another person, we naturally shrink and draw back our own leg or our own arm. The mob, when they are gazing at a dancer on the slap rope, naturally right and balance and twist their bodies as they see him do and as they feel that they themselves must do if in his situation. Pity and compassion are words appropriated to signify our fellow feeling with the sorrow of others. Sympathy, upon some occasions, may seem to arise merely from the view of a certain emotion in another person. The passions, upon some occasions, may seem to be transfused from one man to another instantaneously. Grief and joy, for example.
Whatever, sorry. It was just like that. So please do it like he does and take your time. But don't be afraid of being boring. So start again. Passions upon.
Passions, upon some occasions, may seem to be transfused from one man to another instantaneously. Grief and joy, for example, strongly expressed in the look and gestures of anyone, at once affect the spectator with some degree of painful or agreeable emotion. The smiling face is to everybody that sees it a cheerful object, as a sorrowful countenance, on the other hand, is a melancholy one. We sympathize even with the dead. Even with the dead. And overlooking what is of real importance in their situation, that awful futurity which await them, we are chiefly affected by those circumstances which strike our senses. It is miserable, we think, to be deprived of the light of the sun, to be no more shut off in this world, to be shut off from life and conversation, to be laid in the cold grave a prey to corruption and the reptiles of the earth, to be no more thought of in this world, but to be obliterated in a little time from the affections and almost from the memory of their dearest friends and relations. The idea of that dreary and endless melancholy arises altogether from our putting ourselves in their situation and from our lodging, if I be allowed to say so, from our lodging our own living souls in their inanimate bodies, and thence conceiving what would be our emotions in this case. This is from this very illusion of the imagination that the foresight of our own dissolution is so terrible to us. And that the idea of those circumstances which undoubtedly can give us no pain when we are dead makes us so miserable while we are alive. And from thence arises one of the most important principles in human nature, the dread of death. The great poison to the happiness, but the great restraint upon the injustice of mankind, which, while it afflicts and mortifies the individual, guards and protects the society. When the original passions of the spectator, the person principally concerned, are in perfect concord with the sympathetic emotions of the spectator, they necessarily appear to this last just and proper and suitable to their objects. On the contrary, when the spectator finds that they do not coincide with what he feels, they necessarily appear to him unjust and improper and unsuitable to the causes which decide there. To approve of the passion of another, therefore, as suitable to their objects, is the same thing as to observe that we entirely sympathize with them. I judge of your sight by my sight, of your ear by my ear, of your reason by my reason, of your resentment by my resentment, of your love by my love. And hence it is that to feel much for others and little for ourselves, that to restrain our selfish and to indulge our benevolent affections constitute the perfection of human nature and can alone produce among mankind that harmony of passions and sentiments in which consists their whole grace and propriety. As we love ourselves, as we love our neighbor, is the great law of Christianity. So it is the great precept of nature to love ourselves only as we love our neighbor, or what can do the same thing, as our neighbor is capable of loving us. Self-love. Self-love was a principle which could never be virtuous in any degree or in any direction. It was vicious whenever it obstructed the general good, when it had no other effect than to make the individual take care of his own happiness. It was merely innocent. Those benevolent actions which were performed notwithstanding some strong motive from self-interest were the more virtuous upon that account. They demonstrated the strength of the benevolent principle, where the necessary assistance is reciprocally from love, from friendship, from gratitude. The society flourishes and is happy. All the members of human society stand in need of each other's assistance. All the members of human society stand in need of each other's assistance and are likewise exposed to mutual injuries. All the members of it are bound together by the agreeable bands of love and affection and are, as it were, drawn to one common center of mutual good offices.
You know, when I hear that, I have difficulty in understanding how Smith can be considered the father of Homo economicus.
The father of?
Homo economicus. The economic man, the mythical founder of modern economic theory. If you want, it's a rational and computing individual who is supposed to be inside all of us, and it's an individual who is supposed to help us to make the best economic decision in the best of all possible world, and he's a selfish individual who only thinks of his own interests and makes very complex calculations to maximize his utility. And so, for example, if we suppose that you are a Homo economicus, so then first I think you remove this token. And because as a Homo economicus, you don't take the risk of making a fool of yourself, you know, without a precise reason and without being sure that it maximizes your utility. You would also remove your will.
Sorry.
Yes, I think so. And so, then, if we suppose that you are a Homo economicus, then you know how to optimally balance work, leisure, consumption, savings, pleasure of today, regrets of tomorrow, and you are very strong in mathematics. Yeah, and you have for everything complete reflexive and transitive preferences.
What?
reflexive, and transitive preferences. It means, if you want, that you know for sure if you prefer apples to pears. And if you prefer apples to pears and pears to quinces, then you prefer apples to... If you prefer apples to pears and pears to quinces, then you prefer apples to...
Quinces!
Yes, of course, you got it. You see, your life is regular and clockwork, without dissonance, without improvisation, and with an invisible hand as a conductor.
And what about passions, morals, and sentiments?
We don't care. Come on, we are economists, not therapists. So, we merely consider you to be perfectly rational.
Perfectly rational. And what about the Homo sympatheticus? You know what? I would have liked to be the son of Adam Smith. I would have been called Adam Smith. Adam Smith, son of Adam Smith, himself son of Adam Smith. Adam Smith passed from father to son. And if I had had a son, I would have called him... Yes, you got it. We could have generations and generations of Adam Smiths. A dynasty. One of us would have become president of the Republic. Another one, a rock star. I would have been the rock star. Hey, for whom did you vote to the last elections? Smith and you, Smith. Have you heard the latest Smith album? Yes, excellent. Did you read the latest Smith? The latest Smith? I devoured it. Adam Smith is really the crème de la crème. Had I been his son, I would have failed. I could fly. I would have certainly felt intelligent, or completely dulled, crushed for the paternal figure. But me, I would have fought. I would have shut them up. All these ruffians lacking in inspiration, all these bad translators and these false thinkers. No, 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 no. It's not at all what my father meant. You've got it all wrong. Go back to the drawing board, people. I would have sued them all. Forbidden Adam Smith ties, pins, t-shirts, silk scarves. Forbidden busts made in China. Forbidden everything made in Smith. And he, I mean, Adam Smith, he would have been less afraid. Less afraid of leaving behind any unfinished thoughts. He wouldn't have had all his papers burnt before dying. Poor Adam. You speak about posterity, a masquerade, yes indeed. If only he knew.
by researchers in philosophy, economics, and literature. We have some books for sales, with t-shirts, cufflinks, scarf. And the other point is that if you would like to welcome to host the conference in your university or in your institution, so please contact me by email at Vanessa Oltra, University of Bordeaux, and we could organize it with pleasure. And then the last point is that if some of you have time and want to ask us questions, we will email for a while to discuss if you wanted to have questions. And again, thank you very much to the ESHET, to Wolven Rubin, to Jean-Sébastien L'Enfant, to André Latribu,